Hey everybody, it's Theoretical Bullshit once again. This is part 2 of whatever I'm going to call this video. So the last one I wanted to just, read some basic ideas that I've had before about, design and complexity and how we sort of detect design and what it means and how it, what it leads to logistically. But this one, hopefully, will be a little more off the cuff, a little more spontaneous. And that could be a disaster as well. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But basically, I had some thoughts recently, and it was about this subject, but it came from some responses that I got from one of the last videos I did, which was nature, existence, and beer. Two different responses from two different people in particular really got me thinking, and they were very intelligent, articulate responses from intelligent, articulate people, and I want to give credit where credit's due. Somebody first, and I hope they'll forgive me for reading a private message out loud, but somebody named MSUDDUTH06. I don't know if that's Miss Udith 06 or Masudith, or I'm not exactly sure, but they've written me before. And here's what they said. It was a rebuttal. Is actually this person does not agree with me and my points. It was more of a rebuttal. But they said that in their rebuttal they said this, and it was really interesting. They said Christians don't claim that God is complex. This is a particularly strange sort of representation, given that Western philosophical theists, including Christian philosophers such as Thomas Aquinas, have typically argued that God is not complex. So Christians can't be accused of trying to explain complexity by appealing to complexity. Now, perhaps what you want to say here is that even if the Christian doesn't claim that God is complex, he ought to think this because God would have to be complex if God existed. But in that case, you'll need to explain what complexity amounts to and why we should suppose that God, if he existed, must be complex. Okay. So there we go. We have that. That's a valid point. Basically saying that, here's God, this cognitive, thinking, feeling, emotionally intricate being, exists without actually being complex. And that's that argument, that God exists and has all these thoughts and feelings and fears and is able to, has a will and a desire and can do all these things without being complex. That's really interesting. Now hold on to that thought. Now let me read you something else that somebody else wrote me. This is from Mighty Tiny, and he said something which I also think was really sharp. And he wrote a comment on that video, and he said, one of the things he said was, every single example of cognitive ability we have is founded on an enormously complex and intricate physical brain structure. If it is possible to have these abilities without any such supporting structure, whether material or somehow immaterial, we don't have a single verifiable example of such a thing. Also, if immaterial, simple, and non-intricate consciousness and cognitive ability would be possible to avoid having to explain complex design in God's features, in addition to being completely counter to all empirical evidence and highly absurd, it would beg the question of why we drag around these hugely complex, energy-consuming, redundant gray lumps in our heads to produce what could be produced without such complication. Now that is a great point. I wish I had thought of it, but I'm going to try to elaborate on that a little bit. So, thank you, Mighty Tiny. So, do you ever watch that medical drama on Fox, House, where Hugh Laurie plays House? He's always, trying to figure out the diagnosis of the patient, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, and then, everybody's clamoring, and, usually it's, 2 hours before the patient dies or something, or, at the last minute, House has sort of all but given up and decided that the patient is going to die, and he's having some sort of conversation with somebody about something unrelated to the medical case, and he says, some sort of witty quip or some sarcastic comment you don't have enough balls to, and then he stops, and he looks around the room and he freezes and he gets this idea and he's like, oh my God, that's it, balls, it's about balls, testosterone, the patient doesn't have enough testosterone, he must be a woman, yeah, that's right, he's a woman, so the diagnosis is, and then he ends up figuring out, and saves the day by the end of the show. Well, taking these two ideas and putting them together sort of made a light bulb go off for me, and I'm sure that Mighty Tiny is steps ahead of me on this one, but I figure somebody's got to do a video about it. So let's address that. Let's take these two ideas and let's compare and contrast, and let's do it the way that I love to do things, which is to put myself in a Christian theistic position and try to look at the situation from that point of view, and then like just reason my way from the inside out. So here we go. We've got this first statement that was made, and the first statement is sort of an acknowledgement that cognitive beings, with who are emotionally intricate, with feelings and thoughts and likes and dislikes and fears and hopes and all that stuff, can exist without being complex. They can exist very easily without having any kind of physical or non-physical complexity at all. That can happen. That's the first sort of stipulation. And then we've got Mighty Tiny, who came along and just sort of made an observation, which is that, hey, look at us. Look at the world around us. Everything is complex. Everything is completely intricate physically. I mean, like, the human brain has so many different, neurons firing in circuits and this and that, and it requires that to be going on for us to be thinking. No brain, no thought. Without the stuff that's going on physically in the brain, we can't think or feel or have opinions or likes or dislikes or any of that. So our cognitive abilities, our thinking, our emotions are dependent upon this physical gray lump of matter in our heads, which is doing this job. Also, our breathing and our existence is based upon our heart pumping and our lungs, and all of these things need to be going on for us to exist. Yet, you've got this God who created it all, who was the mind behind it, supposedly. And if Christianity is true, and if theism is true, if this is the case, then that means that omnipotent, omniscient, all-powerful, all-knowing being could have very easily created us without being complex, could have easily created us to walk and talk and think and breathe and feel and judge and like and dislike and do all of those things on our own without requiring the trickiness of the human body and the physicality of, and the materialisticness and all of the inherent problems that go along with it. He could have created us without all that messiness, but didn't. So here, you got these two ideas, and you just put them both together, and you seem to have a sort of a contradiction, or not a contradiction so much. I mean, I guess you could very easily believe that God arbitrarily decided to design us in such a way that we almost appear as evidence for evolution. Which fits perfectly, and I don't know why a God would decide to do that. I mean, literally, the way that we are physically is completely accounted for by evolution, but now it seems that our complexity is not accounted for if you believe in an omniscient, omnipotent creator, designer, that exists without being complex, yet is emotionally intricate, and has the ability to create other cognitive beings that are emotionally intricate without being complex. And it just makes absolutely no logistical sense whatsoever. So I guess my question for the Christian is why? Well, first of all, why do you believe that that's a more logical, rational explanation than materialistic ones or secular ones? But further, my question is, what do you think is the reasoning behind that? Why would a God do that? And I don't want to hear it's beyond our comprehension, or it's not for us to question, or God has an answer, but we don't get to know it. If you're going to say that, then I don't really want to hear the response. Well, that sounded kind of bitchy, I'm sorry. But yeah, why do you think that is? I want to hear an account for that. I want to hear a Christian theistic account for that dichotomy. And that's it. So, thanks for listening to me ramble, and I hope to hear what you guys think, and alright, take care. Peace.